Come on, let's go. Absolutely. My goodness. Oh, boy. No, I want you to be as bad as you want to be. To Julie here, she's the boss. Am I early or is it just?
No, I think it's.
I like the 60 days of December.
Oh,
Vicka. Well, it's kind of right.
It's not a permanent thing, it's.
Right.
Just if they had another.
Right.
Yeah, I did that.
We can't do it.
Right, we could have a meeting.
Right, right.
They want.
It is. Hey.
How are you? Splendid.
I know. It was a thing at the moment, so I'm sorry.
No problem.
I could go on the other
Yes.
Yeah, balance out.
Did your kids go with you?
No. I had to get back to them.
We can put the camera.
That's my girlfriend.
Oh, boy. Which what part of Florida? Some friends. I'll wait till I call it. Yeah. Did you slide over to Naples too?
I did see this.
Did you hang out down there?
Are you in the house or not?
I got you.
Good evening, sunshine.
Good evening, sunshine. Earth stays low.
Up room already.
We twinkle above us. We twinkle below.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was on TV once. I got knocked off. Yes. I got it this morning. I'm good.
Good evening, everybody. Want to do roll call?
Okay, Alderman Kiefer.
Here.
Alderman Barry.
Here.
Alderman Howard.
Here.
Alderman Murray. Here. Absent, freezing, and sir. Five, you know how I had to wait. Sir.
Keep asking.
Calling sir.
That's crazy.
That's on TV now.
Right?
I can fade over to the empty desk.
Let's get through,
Bueller.
roll call. That'd be good.
Forget it.
I'm here also.
Oh,
All right, do we have any, who we got on, anybody have anything with the minutes, or do they want to have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the minutes, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Passes. All right, next up, guys, we have the guest period. This is a unstructured period. If anybody has anything they want to talk about that's not on the agenda, come on up.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
No, he said he had something.
Thank you.
I'm gonna talk about the arbors, so you need to recuse yourself, or do you mind listening?
We're not.
Man, are you talking about me?
Well, you have houses up there, I don't know.
But you don't live in one of my houses,
No, I don't.
which is a big mistake, by the way.
It's on film. I didn't know you that. So two things. First of all, there's a gigantic pothole as you enter the arbors. I called the arbors about it, I spoke to a few people, they said, "Look, they're going to call the city." 2 weeks later, nothing happened. So I watched Facebook go back and forth as we do on Facebook, right? And nothing happened. They're just complaining. So I called the city, and in 36 hours, the pothole was filled. So thank you, right? Facebook didn't do anything. I'm going to get to you.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the buck.
What?
No,
Yeah.
so far, so good.
36 hours, pothole was filled, call the right people to get done. Arbors parking, so I live on Rockwood Arbor Drive, it's the main road straight up. And last night I drove around because I was going to see people. And people are parking on both sides of the street. Streets are too narrow for 2 cars to be. They're parking next to fire hydrants. Where I come from, they'll put the hoses right through your windows. They're not gonna put them over. And there are places that I literally couldn't get my car through. I had to bring my mirrors in and squeeze. And where I come from, the fire engines are gonna go right through your cars. There's also 2 cars on my block. One hasn't moved in 4 months. People moved in across the street and their car hasn't moved in over a month. And it's on a curve with no lights. Don't mind not having the lights, but you can't see. And he's almost hit me coming out of his driveway and I just give the look. So I have tried to talk to people. I have called the arbors, the bride, everybody, and they still say, we're gonna talk to the HOA. I know the streets are private. I thought I'd bring it to your attention because there are absolutely no signs in there that say no parking or speed limits or anything. It's a safety issue. I almost had a few head-ons. My wife's almost had a few head-ons. There are residents who are just bantering on Facebook about it. So I figured I'll come here and just leave it with you guys. If you could, I know you're not gonna answer me here, but give me direction, I'll go.
Can you summarize it one more time? So you're saying, the speed limit sign's not posted in there right now?
No.
And then you're saying,
There's
there's
no-
no parking one side is not on there, you can't tell so people are involved. So
Right.
the signage is the big issue right now.
It is, and people parking on the street, so you're not allowed, covenants you can't park for
And then
12
enforce
and 6.
it.
And I know you can't enforce the covenants, but no one's enforcing them, so there's cars all over the street, you can't see at night. And one of them parks right at the top of the hill where that first circle is. So at the beginning of a circle, you've got to go around him to get around the circle. And of course, they're all dark cars, right? So you can't see them. And yes, I've talked to the people, I hate doing this, but it's a safety issue. And if there's a fire and they can't get to my house, right? And it's a nuisance. The kids can't play because cars are going zigging in and out. And it's not the workers, it's not the people building the homes.
So there are no street signs at all?
There's a couple on the smaller block right behind McBride's main office. They just put up because they're gonna build a spec home there, so they put a no parking sign in front of the fire hydrant, which makes absolutely no sense to me. And some speed limit sign, I think it's Greensfelder Road. But other than that, there's none on the parkway. Sorry, the drive. It was originally called a parkway, then they changed the name to drive, and again, where I come from, I don't know if it's the same here in St. Louis. The parkway means you can't park on a parkway. Changing it to, what?
They just call whatever here.
Yeah, well, you can't park on Legend Parkway technically, it's a walking path, but we won't go there, I'm sorry. I retract that statement.
We should have never left.
But you're looking at
So
signage.
I didn't wanna.
So the,
Signage.
so you're looking at signage, better enforcement of the, once we get the sign, once the signage, what it's supposed to be, then better enforcement, a little bit of that would be, that's more of the safety issues.
It's the safety issue, yeah. Yes.
Well, you got a good audience, you have the fire chief, the police chief, and I do think that is an area, sometimes it gets kind of lost on that, different areas I'm in. Sometimes the small signage can be a weird area because it's not all shown on development plans, it's everybody puts people in the sign, everybody put a, like different non-parking signs and stuff like that, it's gonna be something you need to address a little bit more.
If you could, completely just keep getting the same answer for months now. We'll talk to the HOA and not. But I will give a shout out to the chief, the EPD, as he's up there 24/7 and really.
We'll take a look at the signage and stuff, because it may be something that they, I mean, they're supposed to post and they're certain parks, they may just be that it's not.
Yeah, children playing and stuff like that. Okay, I can talk forever, so I'll be done now.
Sounds good, Tom?
Appreciate it.
No problem. Sure. Anybody else going up?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Jerry Dion, and my wife and I recently moved to Eureka. So please excuse any not understanding this process exactly. I've been in unincorporated St. Louis for 30 plus years. I live in the villas of Autumn Glen down there. And two things that we haven't gotten quite acclimated to in Eureka are the water, but I know that's been beaten to death, and I know that there's measures underway to take corrective actions there, and hopefully solutions will be forthcoming shortly. The one that I really wanted to address, and this was with some guidance from Brian, which I appreciate, is the discussion of a quiet zone in the, as far as the railroads go, a quiet zone or partial quiet zone. I've done some research into it, and apparently there are measures that can be taken to not eliminate, but to reduce the noise generated by the trains as they go through town, the horns specifically. And I know it takes a lot of cooperation between municipalities, FRA, railroads, but there are solutions and options out there. And my question to this board is, have those discussions been held currently? I went through the minutes over the past couple of years, and I didn't see a whole lot of discussion regarding the topic. But I think as far as the quality of life in Eureka, doing something moving forward in that regard may be something to be worth considering. And again, my question is, what discussions have been held or are currently being held regarding that topic? Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can do a quick thing on that just shortly, because we do have several years ago, which I still have a copy of around, so I was actually, they did a study on a quiet zone for the train, so they're not like Kirkwood, you can go through Kirkwood, they don't have the horns go off, you still have to stop. I don't know that it's been an active discussion because a lot of the options are pretty expensive. Some of them require completely reconfiguring, like what was in between the tracks. Downtown is very difficult because there's ground that's in between the tracks. There's stuff that's too close to it, the lights, so there's a lot of configuration. There might be acquisition you'd have to do to completely silence them. It's difficult. They do have an option on there where they call them wayside horns, which would blow direct as opposed to as loud. I've not physically seen those. I've heard they're better, but I don't know what happened to that option. But the other issue you run into is they blow several times because they blow downtown and then they blow all the way through past the Legends, all the way through Allenton. And some of those there are several that are unguarded crossings.
Right.
Which means that you'd have to get those installed. And that's been something I have a kind of a development checklist of anybody, whenever those properties change hands going on down the road, I've been bringing up, or I've intended to bring up that those need to be crossed, at least attempt to get those to be crossed instead of cross guarding systems, because that would, if they're crossed, you don't have to blow up, they're completely, they don't have any guards on, you have to blow.
Right.
So there's a series of measures on it, but if you were to say, has it been the board's top thing, I don't think it has. But that doesn't mean.
Is it a cost?
Cost and prioritization.
Prioritization.
But I think we could do that afterwards. I think it's something on our general list of things that are out there, like about the value doing that, it hasn't.
Well, as more rooftops are going up out here and people closer in that proximity, I think it becomes a bigger issue. And,
Yeah, I don't
you know,
think so.
people have told me, oh, you'll get used to it, you'll get used to it. Well, we've been here 6 months now. We're not
Well, you
quite.
need to give it a little more time, because the first night I lived there, I built my house up on a big hill, and I hadn't heard the horn as bad, and the horn went off, and I looked at my wife, and I go, I have to move. I didn't realize it was a slot, because I don't have one, now I don't even know what's coming.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, we gotta keep moving, so I appreciate it,
Thank
we'll
you.
talk about it.
Steve Sanders, 206 Pleasant Valley Estates Drive. As you have discussion about the flood risk feasibility study, would you make a comment about the general time course of how long that takes and what happens with information after that? And also how that fits in with some of the preliminary plans for flood walls that we've heard about so far that Eureka's already made. I appreciate that discussion. Thank you.
Nicholas Reed, 722 Hilltop Terrace Drive. I'm sure some of you are aware of kind of our current living situation. You know, there's been some recent activity that has brought me here to kind of bring it to the board and the city's attention. We moved in our current home about almost 18 months, so last July. We kind of have been dealing with harassment, excuse me, shortly thereafter and ever since. The police are involved and have been, but not much has changed. We're kind of getting to that point where something needs to change. Things are escalating, things are getting worse. You know, me and my family, my wife, mostly being harassed. You know, we don't feel safe at our home, kids' school bus stop, and just at community events. You know, so I don't know, I kind of want to bring it up and kind of get the city's thoughts, suggestions, help. We love Eureka, my wife grew up here, you know, we want to make this our home. And just, you know, just kind of a little point, I want to kind of escalate it and kind of see what, you know, some thoughts are. And I know a lot of it will probably be, you know, the chief and, you know, kind of, you know, going down the police route again, but just, I don't know, just kind of wasn't sure what the board's thoughts were or any comments or.
What is your address again?
722 Hilltop Terrace Drive?
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
the police reports from the last incidents have made their way through the channels that they do, and they've been submitted to me for review.
Okay.
So the Board of Aldermen, by law, I haven't seen those because they're closed until such time as a ruling is made on those. So they may know some what you're talking about, but not completely. So, again, you or Lindsay, feel free to give me a call. We can go over some of the stuff, because I'm not aware of everything that's going on. I have seen the most recent report, and we can go over what some of the options are, and also this last incident, but I don't know if the board could really discuss much about what's going on recently. They may know the stuff from last summer.
Sure,
Okay.
yeah, and it's just more of a, you know, education of, you know, things aren't necessarily improving.
Right.
You know, things keep happening, so just kind of like, what's next?
Right. And we'd be happy to set up a meeting with you and Lindsay
Sure.
and go over some of what you can tell us more of what you've been experiencing, because I don't know that it's all detailed in the police reports.
Yeah, and it may not be, because, you know, sometimes reports aren't made, you know, things are happening, but there's not enough maybe to kind of write a report on. We've been told, so, you know, sometimes it's, well, you know, just, you know, bringing kids up in this neighborhood, you know, you don't want to have to call the cops every week.
Absolutely. Well, maybe you and I and Chief can sit down and go
Sure.
over some, or and certainly Lindsay as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and, you know, thank you for the time, you know, we want to be here, live here, you know, raise our kids, and
I appreciate you coming up and
Yeah.
doing that, and like I said, I'd be lying if I said I knew everything.
Sure.
She's
No,
not
that's-
for a minute on it, but we'll definitely, I think the board now.
no, I
I
appreciate it.
appreciate you taking the time to go up and do that, and also it's easy to do, we'll try and make sure that, you know, we'll try and emphasize to chief and attorneys that, because you know, again, you don't want to see anybody, regardless of what's going on, there's no reason for somebody to be up here.
Sure.
in the state with all the different stuff going on, if something's not there's something to do, we'll try to do it.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else for the open?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do.
My name is Tom Brueggemann, and my wife and I, along with our son Tim, own the property at 22 Dreier. And first of all, I would like to thank all of you for giving me time to discuss the situation that we're experiencing. My son has already told me, Dad, 3 to 5 minutes, no more. Dad. So I'm gonna try to adhere to that. Our building was constructed in 2008 and 9, and our first and only tenant was the Chamber of Commerce and Urban Development. And they were our first and only tenants until January 1 of 2018. December 11th of 07, we received an email from John Boggs about the requirements of parking spaces to be 9 feet by 19 feet. And if you look at the property line back then, it actually cuts through part of the parking spaces. But we received a letter, priority mail, on April 17th of 2019, telling us that we must remove the parking stops that we had out along the road because we were experiencing an unbelievable amount of vehicles parked alongside the building, as is illustrated in the photos that I gave you. And some of those vehicles, especially the yellow bus, has been there for over 1.5 months. It's still there now. I don't know what the city's requirements are as far as overnight parking in public spaces or whatever, but this is ridiculous. And let me ask each one of you, if you own this property and your daily hours were 9 to 5, and you showed up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and all of those public parking spaces were filled, what do you do? For clients, for the 3 to 5 people that are employed, it doesn't make sense. The thing that kind of tipped the scale for me was 3 weeks ago, and our property, commercial property, has been vacant for 2 years. In 2018, we paid taxes of $10,050 in 18. It's gonna be approximately the same again for 19. What do we get for those taxes paid? When we have a situation with our parking that is a detriment to us trying to sell the property or lease it. 3 weeks ago, female realtor contacted me, said, I've got a client interested in your property. What is the situation with the parking? I said, well, public parking. She said it's full. Well, that client is no longer interested. It's a detriment to us in selling our property or leasing it. We have also been told, and we are very proud of the fact, and I think you folks might know, that it's one of the most aesthetically pleasing buildings in Old Town Eureka. We're proud of it. We made a major investment, over $400,000. We understand we built it in floodplain. We raised it 1 foot above the 100-year floodplain, but it's still in floodplain. So there's that, attitude about people that want to purchase the property. So we invested over $400,000. I expect to lose $75,000 on it. Not a big deal. But I feel that with everything that's gone on, somehow Eureka is against us. I understand that there was an interested party in moving into Eureka, and they were swayed away from pursuing our property. I'm trying to go quick. I understand that there might be a situation where the city would vacate those parking spaces to us. That would be awesome. I'm just asking for some way to appreciate the situation that we're going through. We've tried to sell the property. We have reduced, unbeknown to any of you, we started out at 368,000, losing 32, moot point. But we have reduced the asking price. It is for sale by owner, but we're gonna take a loss. Big deal. Bad investment.
I don't mean to cut you off, but.
No.
Can you just tell us just on the mic, just tell us, if you just summarize, what are you asking us to do to short?
No, what I'm asking is that for you to consider our dilemma, possibly vacate that area so we can have it assigned for business parking. Why should someone be able to have a vehicle there for 2 months? And when I drove by on the way here, there's like 8 vehicles there. Now, I know that there are 2 businesses that complained when we had the parking stops up. One is on South Virginia, the other is on Main Street. For their employees to park there instead of near their business. Not right. So, possible vacate, I would appreciate a written response from the city within 30 days. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really,
Thank you.
really appreciate it. Hey, we love Eureka. We came here to make a good investment, make it nice.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody else up for the open? See anybody else in the open? Once, twice.
Are we dismissed now?
Hey, can we?
Huh?
Go ahead and take it back. You guys are done. You want to?
You can stay or you don't have to stay, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not going to discuss.
No, we don't usually go through all of them. We might talk about it after we get back to you, though. That way give us a chance.
Good deal.
It's okay, we can all walk out, whatever we want.
But you're good. You want to head out? You don't have to stay here all night.
Thank
So,
you.
like,
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, guys. We have a special event permit application for,
See you, Ken.
FMV. You guys,
I'm not.
Second.
move for a motion and a second to approve that special event. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Congratulations, I think you can leave too. Well done. All right, we had nothing from P and Z last week. Let's roll through the, we have resolution, on the TDD funding agreement. Do we have any questions on that?
I would like to, could you explain it to those, our lovely audience on there and out here as far as exactly what that means and then what we're doing there, basically?
We have Rob Clark here tonight, so you have to explain that for us.
I would be happy to explain that. This resolution is doing a couple things. First, it is authorizing a preliminary funding agreement with the two property owners that are interested in forming the Transportation Development District along 4th Street for the purpose of doing improvements at 109 and 4th Street that are going to be required by MoDOT as part of their proposed developments. And it would engage Armstrong Teasdale as by council to the city to oversee that process of forming the Transportation Development District. It would also authorize the city to join in the petition to form the district. That would enable the city to maintain oversight and control over the district once it's formed. And there would be, subsequent to this, a development agreement entered into among the city, to be formed TDD, and the two property owners with respect to their advancing costs for the road improvements and how the district would then reimburse them over time for those improvements.
Okay, so when you say TDD, I know what it is, but can you
Sorry.
explain to them what
TDD is a Transportation Development District. It is a special taxing district that's allowed to be formed under Missouri law via a petition to the St. Louis County Circuit Court. And that district would have its own separate additional funding source. In this case, it's proposed to be a sales tax that would be levied on the two properties in question, which are the existing Quick Trip property, which would be renovated, and an additional property to the north along, or to the west along 4th Street. That would be a proposed drive-through restaurant.
Okay, and those TDD funds, what all are they allowed to be spent on and what are they not allowed to be spent on?
They are allowed to be spent on a wide variety of transportation improvements. In this case, the proposal is they would be spent on the improvements along 109 and then 4th Street, all related to MoDOT permitted work.
So-
They'd be also spent on the related engineering and design work, the cost of the traffic engineer, some other construction inspection, everything related to the MoDOT permitted work.
And Rob, just for clarification, the reason that you're referencing the MoDOT permitted work is because 4th Street is not a city street, it's actually MoDOT right away.
Correct.
With 109.
Correct.
Okay, so would any of those funds be spent for the development of the property or demolition of the current buildings on the properties or
No.
anything to that effect?
No.
It's all on public, basically the funds would be on the public property and the ingress, egress of the properties to public right of way.
Correct. The one thing I would clarify to your point, that there would be some additional right-of-way dedicated as part of this because some of the roadways would be widened. And so there would be an opportunity for the district to pay the cost of that slivers of right-of-way that would be dedicated. So they're not currently in the MoDOT right-of-way, but the district would essentially reimburse property owners for the cost of dedicating that right-of-way as part of the roadway.
Okay, but when I get questions saying, hey, why is the city paying for, a business to develop on that property? We're not doing that. We're paying for the improvements on the road.
You got
The
it.
transportation.
We're not.
Right, well,
Sales tax.
The sales tax, the
The city is
fund.
authorizing the district to be created for the purpose of funding what are
Right.
essentially improvements within the MoDOT right-of-way.
Right,
Yes,
okay, exactly. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any more discussion on that item, or is there anything?
Make a motion to the resolution for second team 19.
That's the
Read it.
motion to read.
Short title.
Yeah.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
A resolution authorizing a funding agreement by and among the City of Eureka, Missouri, Fifth Street Properties LLC and Quick Trip Corporation in connection with the proposed Transportation Development District and authorizing certain actions in connection therewith.
I do have one more question, I'm sorry. Who is Goldberg Associates? Like I see in our stuff, we have, Fifth Street Properties, Quick Trip Corporation, but then there's the Goldberg Associates. Who's that?
Goldberg Associates is actually the owner of the property underneath the Quick Trip. Yet Quick Trip has all responsibility for operation of the facility and maintenance of the land, et cetera.
Okay,
They're not part of the funding agreement because that's all on Quick Trip's nickel, so to speak.
right.
But to form the district, all the property owners must participate, so they, as a property owner, must also be part of the petition
So
process.
they own the land that Quick Trip is
You got it.
located on. Okay,
got it.
got it, thank you.
Where do we end up there?
Need a motion.
Okay.
Make a motion to read it for the second time by short title.
Louis, say motion
No.
over pass an ordinance and just be a.
Okay,
So you just need a motion to.
Motion to approve. I don't have a motion.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Yes. All right, now we're on to give a bill number. 2637, so this will be authorizing the agreement with U.S. Corps of Engineers for progress management feasibility study. And this is the agreement we talked about last week. It relates to authorizing doing a very preliminary agreement with the Corps. They've been working on stuff for about a year, but this would relate to, could be flash flooding, could be river flooding, and just flooding in general with Eureka. But it'd be us taking the next step with them, where they could be doing some initial feasibility to figure out how they could cooperate with our efforts on flood mitigation in Eureka.
so a more in-depth look, just because I've received a lot of questions about this, so a more in-depth look at the studies that they've already done, basically, and how they can.
What they're doing is they're saying, hey, do you guys want to do flood walls? Do you want to try and correct issues in creeks? Anything related to flooding, they're coming back and saying, we've been authorized to spend money to work with you to assess what problems you have and what potential solutions there might be.
We can agree to or not agree to.
Yeah, we're not forced to do it, it's just purely, it's basically like having their input almost as a consultant to come and look at our issues in addition to the efforts that we're doing with our outside engineers and all that. Without a promise of it necessarily fixing anything, but it's just another resource we have while we're doing this work. But it's basically, they would almost be starting over. They're not starting with a baseline and saying, we want you to do this or that. It would be, they basically have said, we did an initial study that said it was worth applying to Washington to get to this next step, to do a feasibility study, and now they're saying, we would like to work with you on that.
Got it.
What's the bill number?
2637.
2637. I move to read bill number 2637 for the first time by short title.
Second. Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
In order to authorize entering into an agreement with the United States Army Corps of Engineers for a flood risk management feasibility study.
Any other read bill number 2637 for the second time by short title.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
In order to authorize entering into an agreement with the United States Army Corps of Engineers for a flood risk management feasibility study.
bill number 2637 for the third time, make sure I time.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed?
An ordinance to authorize entering into an agreement with the United States Army Corps of Engineers for a flood risk management feasibility study.
I move to adopt bill number 2637 by roll call vote.
Alderman Kiefer,
Yes.
Alderman Berry,
Yes.
Alderman Holland,
Yes.
Alderman Murray.
Yes.
All right, bill number 2637 will bear ordinance number 2522. All right, and we have a resolution about authorizing applying for a grant for more recycling carts. I mean, and that one is essentially what it is, it's applying for a grant so we can provide people with more recycling carts that have programs that have to buy them ourselves rather than buy.
I move to bill number, resolution number 12319-2 for the first time.
You have a question over
I have a question, and as we move forward to build up to the new carts, are we putting the new city logo?
that? That should be, but I don't think we got that far in the process.
Okay,
They're doing-
okay, I just,
Julie's doing a program right now on logos, where they're going through everything, trying to catch everything that we.
Sure.
everywhere we put them, they're trying to catch them.
So I got Shirley here.
just want to make sure that,
I just got my new logo on undershirts, it's great. So it's they're gonna be, but no, that's definitely, and that's a good point, because anytime we see it, we're gonna try and catch it as we start transitioning.
absolutely, absolutely.
we
So I
have-
second.
we have a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Authorizing the submission of a grant application to acquire recycling carts.
I move to adopt resolution 12319-2.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That's it, that's a resolution. I got tricked again. All right, we passed it. All right, we have bills for approval. Any other questions?
There are no additions or deletions. I move that we approve.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of paying the bills? Anybody opposed? Okay, votes. All right, move on to mayor staff comments. Brian, you have any?
No, I saw it.
Good.
At our, I believe it was either in October or November, meeting when we were talking about base flood elevation, and you made a comment about, things that, we really know enough or have enough information for us to really understand that. I understand that we are working with Karen with Warner and Schifrin to come and give a presentation on that, but I was just hoping that in conjunction with that, we would also be willing to, allow the chief of USGS surface water hydraulics and modeling from the Central Midwest Water Science Center. He'd like the opportunity, if invited, to explain the differences between allowing a rise of 1 foot versus 1 inch in base flood elevation in the Merrimack watershed, and how that's, how that affects us basically. And specifically from their homepage, the reason I say this is that, they offer they say that we offer information on stream flow, water quality, water use, and groundwater data for Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri. And we conduct unbiased scientific hydraulic investigations and research projects, etc. So if possible, I'd like to offer him several dates to come give a presentation. It's an unbiased source regarding the base flooding.
I guess I'm curious, when you said that now twice, are you saying that our engineer is biased?
Well, I'm just saying that, he has no, engineers provide more of an opinion versus, the scientific facts, and this is a gentleman that they, rely on for their scientific.
But you're saying he's a scientist, and whoever we pay to do this stuff is just doing their thing.
They're an engineer, and, again, like attorneys, attorneys have their legal opinions, and then and engineers,
Doctors and
they-
nurses.
It's the first time nurses and doctors that are scientists.
Well, they're-
that have opinions that this stuff.
they're-
That's, yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, I don't understand, what you're saying, I don't think anybody at the board would stop anybody, I have no from it, be walking some stuff over. I'd like to get, in the interest of clarity, we pay, the city pays this engineer, and we're relying, like, for instance, we're relying on, and part of the reason I push back on that characterization is, we're gonna rely on these people to do flood mitigation or do flood walls. And if we call into question their credibility or their veracity without even hearing from them,
No.
we're relying for them on these things because it's not her opinion on a flood wall, it's not an opinion on ownership, or there's been hours spent. All these people do that, so I don't wanna impugn people that aren't here.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
In the same situation.
That is not what I'm saying, Sean. What I'm saying, I haven't even heard from her in regards to it. I'm just saying that this person is available to offer further education. And that's something that was focused on the fact that we don't know enough about that as a board. And so this person would be willing to provide that education, not only for the board, but also for the residents of the city of Eureka. And again, he's with the U.S. Geological Survey, the Central Midwest Water Science Center. So he's a very reputable individual. He's there and it is, well, it's more of the Central Midwest Water Science Center. So yeah, U.S. Geological Survey. So yeah. And you know, another thing. Yep. Yeah.
I mean, do you want her at the same time as Karen?
I mean, it doesn't necessarily, need to be that. No, I mean, like I said, I'd like to offer him, several days as well. It's just an opportunity for education that I would like us to, be open to.
Okay.
Paul, right, you familiar with him, Frank?
We're professionally clean.
Okay.
Anything else? No.
Good answer,
Yeah, I
good
think I'm
answer.
good there.
Okay.
Thanks.
I have nothing.
I just wanted to follow up on the board thing that we,
Yeah, go ahead, Bob. Might as well do an open and get going on. So Bob said, and some of you guys have gotten emails, we've had an open session on, potentially doing new wards, reallocating population, do our between those. So I would say if you're trying to kind of do that conversation, which I think is a good thing to get out in the public, if you were saying about the wards and about population, what do you identify as the biggest issue?
I think the fact that we've grown so fast over the time that I've been on the board, since the 1987 I've been on the board, we've grown from a few thousand people to almost 12,000 at this point. We haven't redistributed the wards over that time very well. We kind of put some Band-Aids on the situation by adding to Ward 2, which is the smallest ward. It's half the size of Ward 1 or Ward 3. And we've added Elk Trails and we've added Emerald Forest as kind of a patchwork. But if you take the total number of homes that I think Craig provided was about 3,600 homes in Eureka at this particular time. We can look at two different options. One would be to, try to create an extra ward, which would more fairly represent, all the citizens of Eureka. So I think the 4 wards would be a better solution, or we can try to adjust the 3 current wards, and that would take a little progress where we would have to add to Ward 2, we'd have to add not only the new subdivision across the river, we would probably need to add, up to Shaw's Garden and the Old Town area, and in my ward, Ward 1, up through, probably Orchard Lane and up through St. Anthony's and up on North Street to get the numbers to basically run to 1,200 per ward, at this particular time. So right now there's 1,400 in Ward 1, 1,400 in Ward 3, and 700 in Ward 2. And it's been that way for years. And, since we had this annexation in proposal, I felt it was an appropriate time to do it. And I got together with Brian and Jerry, and we came up with a proposal that took those homes in each subdivision and added them together and came up with a sufficient amount for each ward, including proposed homes and across the river there in Windswept. And then we have homes being built currently in the harbors I think there's 248 homes that haven't been built in Harbors, there's 96 in St. Anthony's, and 18 in Dale Hicks, and then there's some odds and ends, like in Ward 2, but Ward 2 has always been substantially short of the requirements, and I think for fair representation in the city, we need to look at those particular things. If we can't do it before this election, at least get this going so that it doesn't get put off any further, and we can get, you know, better chance, better hold on the fair representation. I think just the size of the city is almost, I believe, 5 square miles. We add in Windswept, we add some more areas geographically. In the old days, the railroad tracks divided Ward 1 from Ward 2 and Ward 3, which originally was basically Elk Trails and Hilltop on Ward 1, Augustine Heights in Ward 2, and Shaw's Garden and the Legends eventually came into that ward. So there was not a lot of homes there. Now we've got a huge developments going on in Ward 1, and the Legend is completely developed, and Ashton Wood is also in the Legends or Ward 3. So we definitely need to come up with a solution. And I think if you look at a map and kind of see where Bald Hill and Orchard Lane and up through North Street, you know, following Orchard Lane, you've kind of got 4 quadrants that would nicely divide the city into the 4 wards and approximate, you know, 1,200 homes or so, you know, at the current, or a little less than that, I guess, with the 4 wards, but it would allow even representation for all 4 wards and add an opportunity to move forward in the future if we would annex other areas, perhaps Marisol, or if we get new developments, we can always adjust those wards. It's not going to be a complete fix to the problem, but I think we need to, you know, be fair. It's being from Ward 1, it's a huge area. It covers from, you know, 6 Flags all the way up to basically 109, and it covers a huge area, a lot of people, and a lot of, you know, homes to cover if you're running for Alderman. So I think if we had 4 wards, it would be a better situation. It would allow, you know, for each ward to have its own type of representation for each area.
So I got a question for you. So Bob's talked to me on it several times. I always brought up in the meetings and different things. So part of the reason I want to it's a good idea I think here is, if I'm identifying the 2 things you're talking about, is 1, you're talking consideration with the ad wards, period. And then 2 would be the other side of it, or in conjunction, you're saying, try and take a look at the wards and say, how do I get the population roughly equal between all the wards? How do I do that? I guess my question is, to the board, and I guess it's worth having you guys, because some of you guys have met with them or not, is, do you guys, just to move it forward, what process do you want what do you guys want to do to address it? I mean, do you agree with them and you want to address it? And if you did, what process and how do you want to do it? Because I haven't had, I've known Alderman a very long time. I've not had him be as passionate or be as concerned about an issue as this. He's talked about it, been on there. I don't think you can get it done. I have a concern on trying to get it done by next election, but I do think that there is an issue between this spring, and I think that's Bob's major thing. I think he's said in the past, he's talked about it, or he's had the issue come up. I think he's kind of looking for a commitment, if I'm reading it right, from the board to a period of time to consider the issue in a process. Even if you don't agree with them, at least have a process and do something that we get done on. And I guess that's what I'm kind of asking you guys, because this is not to cop out, but I mean, I don't vote on it, so you guys got to make a decision on how you want to do that. So I guess I would give you one more circle coming back to kind of answer his. So the public's got it where you guys kind of think, and I agree at this point, but do you guys have ideas on how to move the ball forward? Because I think that's Bob's biggest thing he's concerned about, is that type of issue will drop. This is what he's looking for you guys to say, how do we have a process that gets addressed?
I think it's imperative that we do at least, you know, look into having a 4th ward. But I want to make sure that we do it right and make sure the numbers are right. And moving forward, I don't know if it's too soon for us to put it on the ballot now. I think we'd have a better idea of the next year, and also for other developments that are possibly coming in as well, so we don't have to keep changing.
I think
That's just my thought.
I think we've got the numbers for municipal, 500 and some.
But Kathy's, that's what I'm saying, in a real parameter, you can't consider number
Yeah,
of people that are here, so you have to, and that's what I mean, I think there needs to be, and as far as the actual details of how it happens, I think there has to be, I think it would help that Kathy in one going, hey, here's how, because I think there's issues about population versus houses. So there's a little bit of that where I think we need to have her involved on, okay, does this process make sense? But that's what I'm saying to you guys is, how do you want to, because it's something you guys, we kind of did that with this breakout, but I don't know that doing it in a quick session, I mean, for something that big, it probably needs to have several meetings, several things up here at the board. And I think that, I just want to, but that's what I'm saying, I asked you guys, so Jerry's saying, hey, I'm interested in looking at it, and Carleen or Brian, what are your guys' thoughts on it?
I mean, we went through some stuff, and there's one thing that we didn't really look at, and I drove through there today, actually, for a farm, if that ever would.
But again, that's what I'm saying with Kathy, you can't consider areas that are potentially future going to develop, you have to look at what the actual population is today. You can, but that could even be part of your process where you said, I want to have this, because we're not like Baldwin or Manchester, that's that doesn't have major new populations growing up. You do have, because Eureka is a growing place, I mean, it probably does make sense maybe for a while to even set it on there and say every couple of years, maybe it needs to be at least addressed and looked at to account, make sure you get, because it is changing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that could be part of what your outcome is not to leave it static, but to say, hey, we're doing the best we can with today's information, but we're gonna put a process in place so we look at it again.
Right, and next year is a census year for the country, and why don't we do it every 10 years, at least look at the wards the way they are and try to, evaluate it on a short-term basis over time.
Would it make sense to give staff 60 days to come up with actual population to the best that they can as to what exists now, and then give that back to the board and we can look at what is actually there from a population standpoint, and voter registration standpoint?
Yeah, that would be fine, because the reason I just wanted to bring it up, because I think it's important that we resolve the situation, come up with something. If we have a couple extra aldermen, I think that's a good thing. I think it gives us more voices of people that want to hear things.
Well, I think having one meeting in the public too, that invites people out to get some comment would be good too, because I think that's a big enough issue where if you want to have some input from the public, give an opportunity to do that. Which you could kind of put into the process, but I didn't want to cut it, Carly, you have anything?
No, I mean, that's basically what I was gonna say, is I think just having, public comment and hear back from the residents and.
And I think the other thing would be is, if I was looking at everybody, I would say, and I kind of mentioned this to Bob, I think trying to have it, I think an appropriate time frame to give it some parameter would be to try and have something that maybe that decision made by the end of the first quarter, like by prior going into the election, so that if there was a decision made, you could maybe have that go into place after the election, so that you were way outside of it. Nobody's worried about interfering with if you change something right before an election, you're actually after it, and there's a year before you have a problem. That's one of my concerns too, is I don't want to have it feel like, hey, you're monkeying around with, there's enough talking about on the federal level, we don't need to.
Well, it doesn't look good, throw it in that quick.
Well, and I just don't want to, like, if you're trying to register us, you're trying to vote somewhere, whatever, I just don't want to, I would like to be far enough out so that we're not doing that. But that's what I would say. So if you were to put a process, is there possible you could do a brief memo to the board that would be like, here are the requirements, and then here are the pieces that we're gonna provide, and then the board can take that and put a place to do that, with kind of the rough parameters of it. Does that make sense to you guys?
Like Bob said, we want to do it right.
Well, I think there's enough, I think we can get that information. Craig's already got some comparison to other cities with wards, so we can sit down, we could kind of tear that apart a little bit and maybe do it in just a session at the front or something like that. So.
Yeah, I think everybody knows that the wards are on a balance, so we need to do something.
All right, does anybody else have anything in the comments? It's a little extended period. But,
Can I get back to this gentleman and say, yes, we'd like to have you here, or where are we on that with the USGS?
Okay, can you,
Yes.
I just
think I've confirmed Karen for the 17th. Could you get the info with Craig? And, so we can figure out what meetings and stuff like that are going on, where you can, I mean, most of the time when I do that, is coordinate with him when he's calling at times. That's what it's gonna be on an agenda. I'm not gonna.
Would you
I'm not
prefer
opposed
that,
to-
would you prefer he be at the same meeting, or, I mean, do you have?
I really don't care. I just, what I'd like is, like, so what I'm trying to do with Karen is provide, prior to the meeting, provide some, what I struggle with in meetings that are technical is having no prior, you kind of understand where you don't have prior information. So what I'm trying to do is get from her, so you guys can get a board package, kind of a primer of what the, so you got a chance to read it and ask questions. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not familiar with what if he's just trying to talk in general, or is he trying to advocate for a position, or I don't know anything about what he's doing, so that's what I'm trying to, I mean, if it's just a presentation where he's saying, hey, this is what I want, I suggest you do, is that basically what he's saying?
So he researched the whole Merrimack, oh golly, Kevin can. Watershed, yes, the whole Merrimack
Does he have a
watershed.
report for that?
Is he anything to look at?
Well, he does, I mean, he does have reports, but I would also like, well, I guess to get beforehand, but I don't think that should negate the fact that.
I mean, it doesn't make,
Actually,
no, just be great to
okay.
get the, that's all I'm saying, is that if I had the, like, you could give us reports, here's what's going on, it would help us figure out, is it a presentation, is it 10 minutes, 15, what is it?
Can I speak to that? Because Carlene's essentially being an advocate for me to push this forward. Essentially, I've reached out and asked to, I think that you expressed at a meeting that none of us in general, know the differences, the benefits, the pros, the cons of what Jefferson County did with a 1-inch base flood elevation restriction versus our 1 foot. And so he is strictly offering to educate. He is a non-confrontational individual. He won't argue with an engineer. He provides data and studies to engineers. So after the 2015 flood for the USGS, he was the chief author of flood inundation and studies of what has occurred. His primary concerns are that most of the legislation that goes into place for developing a floodplain is looking specifically at that parcel that's being developed rather than all the development that's occurred in the given watershed. So what he would like is an opportunity to express the value of, so many states have already exceeded the federal minimum and state guidelines. So he would like the opportunity to express the pros and possibly entertain the cons and educate. And it's certainly,
All I'm saying is, I don't have any issue with anybody coming up and talking and giving information. All I'm saying is, it helps me if I can read, I mean, if he's done a presentation or report, you guys have written documentation.
well, he has lots of written documentation you can read all day long, but he would like 15 minutes to
I
talk
don't understand,
specifically about
I have the
this.
documentation, and that's what I'm saying, it's a 15 minutes, and that's all I'm saying. is-
That's what he's asking for, is about, he doesn't want to be limited to a 2-minute public
No, it's
comment.
not, I get it, I just need to have some limit, I need to know what the topic is.
15
Otherwise,
minutes is what
everybody
he
shows
asked
up, and we could do it all night with other stuff. I just want to try to, I don't have if I have the engineer from the city on this topic, I know what I'm talking about. If I'm gonna invite somebody else in, I just like to see what the topic is, what we talk about, have some parameters, put a piece of time on it, and potentially you might have something where if it makes sense, and if we're able to look at it, we can say, well, this person says this and this, and they're both here, it'd be interesting to have, or whatever you want to do. But I do, most of the time for meetings, I just think the city admin should coordinate the meetings, is all I'm saying. So if you just give them the contact information, and if there's any written stuff, then he can contact you and say, hey, anything you give me for the board, we can get back and we can try and pick it. If it makes sense on the 17th, that'd be great. And I'm trying to do the same with, like, so with Karen or any of those guys, all these meetings, I generally try and get Craig and those guys to try and schedule. Because I just think it helps coordinate it. And that way, he's trying to do agenda items and all that stuff, we can put it together.
So what is it that you're asking for exactly? For
For
him?
you guys to call Craig and work it out with Craig.
Sure.
And if it's a 17 and it works and we got information, great, and he'll contact us back, and then I gotta wait, keep it organized with the agenda.
Yeah,
I know you guys don't want to talk to
Yeah, I actually
Craig, but you
doubt
gotta
it.
talk to Craig. Nobody wants to talk to Craig.
Yeah, I doubt if he's available on the 17th, because they're
Well, if
fighting.
he's not available on the 17th, we'll do something else, but he can work it out. That's what I'm saying, I can't work it out, the right guy to organize who comes to a meeting is the city administrator.
Yeah, and I think he also indicated to me that he had a working relationship professionally with Craig as well. So
I was at this. Well, I definitely don't
Probably
want to.
complain about
I
it.
mean, in fact, I think it just disqualified. No, we'll get together, Craig will try to get stuff, I get the information.
I think it would be good for all of us.
I don't think it hurts at all, all I want to try, all I'm expressing to everybody is, just like you guys do, I just don't like, it really helps me to read or look at stuff before I have the meetings, at least on our level, because I just, otherwise I don't even know what to ask. So, or you're able to ask more questions if you read it or whatever. So I will read it if I could. Dr. Craig and those two guys in a professional relationship can give us the documents.
We're earning that money now.
So work it out with them afterward, you're fine. Does anybody else have any other comments? Tough crowd, all right. We have a motion for close.
So moved. I mean, wait, to close, yeah. Close.
Second? All right. Good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Get down, sister.
I'll reach out to him.